Yo, what is going on, my dudes? Welcome to another RuneScape news coverage video. For this video, we're going to be talking about the bank rework, the state of the updates, where Jagex plans on going with it, etc. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the video. Let's go.
Cats is the illest. What you talking about, Willis?
Alright guys, so this information is coming from Reddit, from mod Shauny. So I will have a link down in the description below if you want to read this off in its entirety. You can just head on over there to do so. But let's jump into it. First off, the main bank rework as a whole has been shelved. However, they do have plans for bank placeholders. Bank placeholders are currently in the process of being prototyped by the engine team. So we're looking at actually very early stages in terms of the bank placeholders and how far along they come. Not very far at all. I'm actually going to go over some questions in the post, a little bit of Q&A just to give you some information about, some of the things the community has asked about regarding the bank and various different things associated with it. So first off, adding more bank slots. This is actually a big problem that most people won't be able to see initially, but they do want to clarify on it. So bank space is something that they're always looking into, but there are limits in terms of bank space that they can do with the game, and they are looking ways to remedy that. However, there are two particular aspects that they have to consider. First off is the save game size. So for example, if you think of an item with the most variables, for example an augmented item with both gizmos, maybe it has a certain amount of charges, etc. Those types of items are the most costly in terms of save space per bank slot. Then you multiply that with the number of bank space available already and add even more to that, and multiply that by the maximum number of players that need those bank spaces, it ends up being a massive amount of storage space that they need to allocate at all times to make sure nobody loses out on any of their items in their bank. Adding just a little bit of bank space per player ends up equating to a massive amount of storage space. They're aware that it's a problem, and they are not unsympathetic to players' issues. And they did do a study on how many people this affects. It is a decent chunk of people, but not as much as players would expect. So this is why they have an emphasis on new content being focused around inventories. One example is an upcoming update to the player-owned farm, where you can have farm hands that will help you save up some bank space. Now the second aspect, aside from save game size, that they need to consider is the impact more bank slots could have on other content. They say that adding bank slots also affects other content, such as things that check whether you own an item. A recent example was the potential impact on the Diango system that stores items for you and allows you to retrieve them. As recently as last month, they had a bug with Diango that led players to crash the moment they clicked on him. This was hotfixed immediately, but this was a result of enabling him to search additional inventories for your items. Adding additional slots to your bank could have similar effects on other content that you just can't foresee at this point. So moving on, why did they not announce this at Runefest? This is pretty simple and straightforward. Runefest this past year was for the winter reveals. If you remember, this was for things that were definitely coming out before February 2019. That simply just wasn't on the list at that time. Moving on, why can't they do what they did with old school RuneScape with placeholders? The key answer here is within the items themselves. Old school placeholders are automatically generated objects similar to notes, which means each item actually has multiple types of that item. For example, you have the item itself, you have the item noted, and then you have the item as a placeholder. Since it's a game from 2007, there are significantly much less items in the game. They can't actually take this approach with RS3 because that would push the item ID far over the current limits. Now this limit can be raised, but a lot of non-game features would need to be updated to compensate for it. Things like GE, Adventures Log, Forum Avatars, and many more like it, which ends up being a much more bigger amount of work than previously thought when you want something like old school placeholders. Also, in particular cases where they would have to change GE, that would actually also impact old school because both games share that module in a similar sense to how both games share the same friends chat updates at the same time. And that could have some unforeseeable side effects to old school perhaps. Moving on, why have they shelved everything else besides placeholders? First off, they want to say that this has actually been the status for the bank rework for a long time. Doesn't mean that they'll never pick it up in the future, but the benefits for the rework don't offer as much as they could get from smaller engine features that have also been requested over the years. The rest comes down to the sheer complexity of an update like the bank rework. They say to start a game engine update is very different from a content one. If it breaks, they have to turn the game off until it is fixed, which can be mitigated through having beta servers, but it still makes large scale changes risky. Also, the way the game works, all inventories are practically considered the same thing. That includes shops, your worn equipment, your beast of burden, your bank, etc. All are the same thing at its core. Various different game scripts will generally define the behavior of those inventories, which means making a change in the engine to support bank features doesn't just have the potential to break bank, but pretty much the entire game or anything that involves all the various types of inventories. On top of this, any changes that are made to the engine, which the client needs to know about, would need to be implemented in NXT, in Java, and HTML5, in which the COM app is based, all of which are very different languages which could break in very different ways. It's not a straightforward thing to just turn one of these off. So next up, why did they say they're doing the update in the first place? Well, way back when we first heard about it, they were experimenting with a Ninja team on larger scale updates, which were quality of life rather than your typical Ninja fixes, which had a much less, impact on the gameplay than when, Ninja first started. They had the means to do engine work in that Ninja team and looked at a lot of technical complexity and felt like it was possible, even though it would take a long time. Ultimately, it ended up being not possible to produce a bank rework at the scale that they had anticipated, but that didn't come apparent to the team until months after they made the announcement at Runefest 2016. So ultimately, with that all being said, in short, the bank rework as a whole is shelved. They are not working on it and will not work on it for the foreseeable future. They are investigating bank placeholders on its own as a feature, but at the current stage, it's purely investigation into whether it's feasible, and they aren't making any progresses on delivering even the bank placeholders. It's very unfortunate, but do let me know what you guys think about this. It's been such a long time coming, and it's really unfortunate to see that this may never see the light of day, but I'll just leave you off with that. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I'm gonna wrap up the video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet and you want to stay up to date on all things risky related, then hit the subscribe button. As I appreciate you watching, I'm out. Peace.